Hey, everybody, welcome to your horoscopes for the week. And these are the horoscopes for the week ending June 4th, the very last part of May, the first few days of June. We have a Gemini new moon this week. We have a end to the Mercury retrograde this week. Still in the shadow period until the 10th, but the actual retrograde is over. So that's good news, right? But let's go ahead and get to it. And we're going to get started with Aries. We kick off this week with Jupiter and Mars being in perfect conjunction with each other. And what that means physically is that in our viewpoint, the two are one's on top of the other. Kind of a thing. So they're literally in the same place. Of course, we know that that's not true, but our viewpoint, and in astrology, everything revolves around us, right? Everything revolves around Earth. In our viewpoint, you will see in the sky, you can see Jupiter is like a really, really, really big, bright star. He's really hard to miss, honestly. And Mars, that little pinkish star, are like literally almost one on top of the other. In fact, Mars will probably look like it literally disappears because Jupiter is such a big star. In astrology, a conjunction means that the two planets are working very closely together for a specific purpose, and with focus on money this week, and specifically continuing that expansion of financial goals. Mars energy is a wonderful energy to put into any of your goals, especially when you're in Aries. I mean, this is your ruling planet. When your ruling planet is in your sign, it really brings a lot of power behind and energy behind what it is that you're doing. Also, we're going to continue this grand sextile with the moon, and the moon will kick it off actually, or kick off being part of this grand sextile at the beginning of the month. Mercury, even though it's retrograde, and of course Pluto, even though he's retrograde also. A grand sextile, when you're talking about an aspect like this, it's a very positive, very helpful aspect, and everything is pointing towards you and your goals. So it's like a triangle, and of course the most prominent part of this triangle is the top, the tip, which is where you guys are at. The tip is pointing towards Mars and Jupiter there. So what does this really mean for you? Well, in terms of your financial goals, this is helping you to provide the income resources that you need in order to expand on those goals. Pluto's influence is very much in your day-to-day schedule, but also brings an element of saving into this as well. A lot of times people refer to more money as just getting more money, but when you can find ways to be able to cut some expenses at home, that actually brings more money when you think about it, because you're not putting out as much money as, say, you would be if you're not saving. So those people out there that are couponing like crazy, they've got something going there. Really, that couponing like crazy is actually helping them to expand their income, because they're not spending quite as much money as maybe they would be spending if they weren't crazy couponing, kind of a thing. So it's not just about generating income, it's also about finding ways around having to spend so much money. And in the world that we live in right now, everything is expensive. So we need to really focus on cutting the money that's going out as much as possible. So that's really what this week is all about. It's about, yes, generating more income, but it is also about looking at your expenses and seeing where you can cut down a little bit to kind of help those financial goals along. So that's what I have for you guys this week. I hope that resonates. And we're moving on to Taurus. So the last few days of that Mercury retrograde are happening this week as the retrograde ends and Mercury goes direct on June 3rd, which is right there at the very end of the week. So basically we have one more pretty much full week, and then Mercury goes direct and moves on out of your sign. While he's there, though, he is in a square position with Saturn. Obviously Uranus has moved out of that square position and Mercury has kind of moved in, so that little bit of a break that you guys were supposed to get, well, on a technicality you're getting it, but you're not getting it at the same time. Somebody else has come in and caused a problem. The square between Mercury and Saturn, when we talk about this square between Mercury and Saturn, the challenge really is in your schedule, because Saturn is very much focused on your day-to-day schedule. And Mercury is very much focused on your long-term goals, specifically long-term career goals. So this may cause a bit of a challenge, as it feels like Saturn is kind of causing some disruptions into your daily schedule, which makes it difficult for you to focus on your goals, or to stay focused on your goals, actually, is probably the better way to say that. The way around this, of course, is to eliminate that frustration as much as possible, which is easier said than done. But really, communication has a lot to do with it also. This is about Mercury after all. This is about Mercury being retrograde after all. Mercury retrogrades bring up communication faux pas all the time. So maybe it's not so much about the type of people that you're dealing with that are throwing wrenches into your schedule, but the way you're communicating the importance of being on time, the importance of staying true to your schedule, making sure you stay true to their schedule, different things like that. Also, Mercury continues to be in that grand sextile with Jupiter and Mars and Pluto. So this is actually extremely helpful for you, because a grand sextile is a very powerful and very positive aspect. In his placement in terms of your long-term goals, whether they be educational, whether they be career driven, money driven, specifically, there is, definitely a money influence in there with Jupiter and Mars bringing that influence into it. Sometimes you have to look at changes that are out of your control in your schedule as what's best for you. We have a tendency to think we know what's best for us, of course, and in a way, yes, that is a bit of a control thing there that we do. As human beings, we think that we know what's best for us, and of course most of the time we do, but sometimes our wants and what we think is best for us is not really always the case. So you want to look at these abrupt changes in your schedule as actually maybe working for you. You may actually be losing appointments that weren't for your highest good, maybe even for everybody's highest good, and replacing them with appointments that actually are more true to the goals that you're setting currently at this time. So think about it that way, and it becomes a lot less frustrating. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that resonates. Gemini. Let's kick off the week with a new moon in Gemini. And when the moon comes into your sign, joining the sun to create that new moon, it also joins the sun in its grand sextile with Pluto and Mars and Jupiter. Now, this is a big one for you guys, actually. It's your time. The sun is in your sign. You are very focused on career, and of course Jupiter and Mars are all about money. So when you line up money and career together, magic happens. It really does. This is actually a really helpful aspect for you guys, because it is putting a lot of power and a lot of energy, and specifically transformational energy, towards these specific parts of your life this week. So in terms of your career goals and in terms of your money goals, there is some beautiful energy going towards all this at this time. Really important to harness it, and really important to stay focused. Now, let's talk about staying focused just for a second, Geminis, because unfortunately, while we're having all this beautiful stuff going on, this is the Gemini way, right? You can't have it perfect, right? There's always something. While all this is going on, the moon is in a square with Saturn in Aquarius at this time. So There is a couple of little things that to say about that. First of all, usually, a planet and a planet, they're both in the same element. That usually doesn't happen. Usually it's actually a more positive aspect. But this is because of the way where the sun is, it's like right on the edge, and where Saturn is, it's like right on the edge. It makes it more of a difficult aspect. Coming from this difficult aspect is a lot to do with staying on task, especially when it comes to your schedule. Now, this is the Gemini crutch. I mean, staying on task. You guys are always have like 20 irons on the fire at any given time, and usually are pretty good at being able to maintain most of it. But it just gets to that point, even for Geminis, for everybody, where you just can't handle all this multitasking anymore. So it's really important to focus on the big thing that is going on right now, your main focus, what you need to do to move forward so that all the other 19 irons in the fire actually can move into goals and actually manifest into something that is malleable, and you can see and you can feel and you can use, and you can maybe even hold it in your hand. Who knows? So it really is all up to you guys. You guys are badass. It's up to you guys to be badass this week and keep on task with being badass, because you might regret it if you don't. So you guys have a great week with that. Moving on to Cancer. We have Ceres in Cancer this week, and Ceres is not necessarily one of the big major planets that we talk about all the time. It is a planet. It's a dwarf planet. It's a very small planet. But it does have a very powerful influence. And being in Cancer is very interesting because Ceres is known as the Great Mother. So it is all about nurturing, it is all about mothering, it is all about unconditional love in many ways. And this is really what Cancer, the sign of Cancer, is all about. It is referred to as the sign of the mother. It's ruled by the moon, which is the mother planet, kind of a thing. So we have all of these sort of maternal influences coming in for you guys this week, with focus on those who support you. A lot of times we feel that our support system is only supportive as long as we are supporting them, kind of a thing. And it can often feel a lot of times that if you don't put 150% into your support system, you won't see a return of support at all. Or it can often feel like you put in a lot more support than, say, you're actually getting out of that support system. So it's really important this week, I feel, that a lot of times what Cancers do is they kind of quietly deal with it, and then they say, well, okay, maybe they'll figure it out eventually. They're not going to figure it out eventually. People don't work like that. People are people. They're never going to change, right? If you don't tell them that something is not working right, they're not going to see that it's not working right. So this week really is all about communicating. With Mercury being retrograde right now, Mercury goes retrograde so many times a year to give us so many chances and so many opportunities to see how we are not communicating our needs in the proper way, and consequently that's why we're not getting what we want, right? So it's really important this week to pay attention to that. Are they not giving you the support that you require? Are you giving them more support than they're giving you? It's time to say something about it. It's time to bring light into that. It's time to, or shed light onto that. It's time to use your voice, plain and simple. If you don't state what you want, you're not going to get it. And it's pretty much as simple as that. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that resonates. Moving on to Leo, focus is still on the inner closet, the inner self, those emotional things that we tend to stuff in the background and not deal with until later on. And the moon coming into your sign at the end of the week is not going to make that any easier when he moves into opposition with first Pluto and then moves into opposition with Saturn right after that, pretty much in the same day. Actually, the moon moves that quickly. What does this mean? Oppositions can be very challenging aspects. So when you're talking about moving into opposition with Pluto, who is very much influencing family, this is going to bring up emotional complications with family. Moving on into Saturn, Saturn is very much focused on your day-to-day activity. So there's emotional disruptions in your day-to-day activity. If you have issues with your family, there are definitely going to be emotional disruptions in your schedule also. And for some people, especially, even just a small negative interaction with family is going to blow up and quite possibly move into the next several days. So you do want to pay attention to that and try and make sure that you put a time limit on that. Obviously, we all go through challenges in life. We all go through these things that take place in our lives that hurt our feelings. It hurts our heart. It makes it very difficult to keep going with what you need to do, right? Because you're so focused on this hurt that was inflicted on you by somebody that maybe shouldn't have actually inflicted that hurt on you. And so when you go through something like that, when we all go through something like that, we tend to sit and stew in the problem. And the problem with sitting and stewing in the problem is we take that problem with us into the workplace, we take it into other aspects of our lives that maybe that shouldn't be living in. And then it just kind of snowballs out and starts to cause problems in every aspect of our lives. And that's what we really want to avoid. In terms of the moon's emotional responses, we really want to be aware of, yes, it's okay to have an emotional response to something. You absolutely should take the time to sit down and work through what is going on, but you also want to put a time limit on it as well. Don't let it go all the way into next week. Take the time that day to process, maybe even into the next day to process. After that, you should be done with it and moving on and clear to do whatever it is that you need to do from here on out in a successful way. But you definitely are going to have trouble being successful if you're taking yesterday's pain into today. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that resonates. Moving on to Virgo, it is still all about you this week, Virgos. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but this week specifically, it's about really looking at those things, those parts of yourself that just aren't necessarily in your highest good. We all have them. We all have self-destructive tendencies, and the ego plays a really big part in those self-destructive tendencies. Now, a lot of people that I've worked with, a lot of clients, a lot of students that I've had, when I've asked them, what is the function of the ego? Everybody has the most interesting answer. The ego is bad. It needs to go away. It is terrible. It's blah, 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 blah. It's all kinds of negative stuff, right? The ego is actually a really important part of our human makeup because our ego allows us to take the things that we can't hold on to, the negative things, abuse, any form of trauma. And the ego allows us to look at that with a clear perspective, if we choose to do so, and find a new way of dealing with that. Now, the reason why the ego has such a bad reputation is because a lot of people misuse their ego really, really bad. And specifically, we're talking about arrogance. We're talking about people who are egotistical. They're known for being egotistical because they put themselves above other people, or they put other people down to raise themselves up. And that, of course, is a misuse of ego, or an unhealthy use of ego. Healthy use of ego says, I am this good. I am good enough to have this job. I am good enough to be a parent, but I'm not a better parent than the next person, or I'm not better at this job than the next person, kind of a thing. So this week for you guys, it really is all about taking stock of things that aren't serving you. And if it has to do with your ego, maybe it's time to take another look at that ego and make sure that you are using your ego correctly, and you're not using it to destroy other people in order to make yourself feel better. Because I will tell you right now, it doesn't make you feel better. It might temporarily make you feel better, but in the long run, it really doesn't. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that resonates. Libra, focus is on the past this week, specifically the past in terms of learning from the past. A lot of times when we get stuck in the past, or we get stuck maybe focused on the past, we're either pining for something that doesn't exist, or we're getting ourselves stuck in the muck of something that happened in the past that we can't seem to really pull ourselves out of. But every single one of these things that we've been through in the past does have a lesson to teach us. And that's really what it's all about. In terms of mistakes, making mistakes in the past, as human beings, we do have a tendency to beat ourselves up because we made a mistake, which is definitely not a really good use of that energy. Mistakes are an opportunity to learn. They're an opportunity to grow. They're an opportunity to do better than you did before. So when your focus is on the past, and interestingly enough, Pallas Athene is very much in Libra right now and influencing Libra. Pallas Athene is another one of those, it's a planet, but it's a dwarf planet, and it has an influence. It's not quite as strong as the major planets, but it does pack a punch. When you think about it, Pallas Athene is a warrior queen. She is all about fighting for what she believes in, and she won't stop fighting until she gets what she wants. And this really is what it's all about. A lot of Libras, I've known a lot of Libras, they are fighters, but a lot of times they also get to a point where it's like, well, this is just the way that it is, and so I guess I better accept it. In some cases, that's true, but not necessarily in all cases. And you want to be aware of whether or not you're throwing in the towel for the right reasons or for the wrong reasons. And looking back into the past at similar situations and how you handled similar situations will definitely help you get the answer to that question. Am I throwing in the towel for the right reason or the wrong reason? If you come up with the wrong reason, then maybe you might want to rethink throwing in that towel. Perhaps that's not what you should be focused on right now. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that resonates. Scorpio, it is all about your home this week, specifically enjoying your home time. Lots of times we just spend so much time working and so much time socializing and so much time doing this and that and the other thing. We really have a hard time being able to just really enjoy our environment and really enjoy what we've done to create that environment, if that makes sense. And for you Scorpios, that's really what it's all about for you guys this week. Taking the time to enjoy your environment, not necessarily looking at the improvements you still have to make in your environment or what you would like to put in there, but appreciating the work that you've done up until this point. That is actually a really difficult thing for most people, because the truth of the matter is we're never satisfied. It's basic human nature. We're never satisfied. we never think to take the time to just assess where we've come from and where we are now, unless we've already done everything. And the truth of the matter is that we're never really going to be done doing everything. We're always going to come up with something else that needs to be improved in that environment in some way. So this week is a really good opportunity to just be in that space, to just really pay attention, to look at it, to say, hey, look what I've done so far. Yes, I still have all this other stuff that I would like to do, but let me appreciate where I've been and where I am now, because that is really important. If you don't do that, it sort of feels like no matter what you do, you're just never going to get done. You're never going to get finished. You know, your house sort of turns into the Winchester mystery house, if you've ever heard of that, you know, where it's just constant building, constant decorating, constant fix, constant that. And in some ways it is. Because, you know, obviously, if you have a house for a long time, it's going to have repairs, all this other stuff is just going to happen. So it's really important to take those times to really just appreciate the work that you put into it, to appreciate the fact that you have it, to appreciate how comfortable it is and how much you just love coming home and being in this space. I don't think we give our environments quite enough appreciation. And for you guys, this is a prime opportunity to be able to do that. So I hope that resonates with you guys. And that's what I have for you. Moving on to Sagittarius. Sagittarius is also very much focused on the home and specifically ideas to improve on the home this week. When we talk about ideas to improve on the home, we're talking about things like organization, feng shui, allowing your space to flow, making sure that your space is a comfortable space and it's not over cluttered. Interesting thing that I actually read a long time ago, and it definitely resonated with me at the time. It may resonate with you guys. And being Sagittarians, I think it will, because I have spent many years living in what I consider to be organized chaos. I know where everything is, but it doesn't make any sense to anybody else. And one of the things that I read many years ago was that clutter on the outside results in clutter in here. And those of us that are heavy overthinkers, when you clutter up in here, that just makes that whole situation that much more difficult, and it makes it that much worse. So this week really is all about coming up with ideas to minimize the clutter and to organize your space in a way that might actually work a little bit better for you. The more you organize that space and the more put together that space is, the more relaxed you feel. And the more relaxed you feel, the less you really have to overthink. So really, it's a snowball that runs downhill when you think about it. So this week, take stock in your clutter. We all have a little bit of clutter somewhere. It's important to pay attention to that clutter, to remove that clutter, to clean that clutter out. Even if it's a big job, it's time to rip the Band-Aid off of that and just get it started. Even if you just get it started, you will feel so much better. And when I'm talking about home clutter, let's just say that also can be interpreted as emotional clutter. If you've got a lot of emotional clutter and a lot of emotional stuff that you haven't dealt with yet, you better get to it, because the more you put it off, the more cluttered it's going to be. And the more cluttered it gets, the more difficult it is to focus on everything else. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that resonates. Moving on to Capricorn. Capricorn is focused on family this week, and that is actually a perfect place for Capricorn to be focused on, really. Capricorns are all about children, especially female Capricorns are all about children and taking care of children and making sure that children have a voice, because they don't have a voice. Being the voice for children sometimes is where it's at for Capricorns. At least I've heard more than one Capricorn actually say that before. When your focus is on family, though, it's not just about taking care of that family. It's also about spending time with family, and that's really important. Especially the quality of the time that you spend in terms of being a Capricorn. Capricorns are all about work. Work has to get done. Dishes have to get done. Laundry's got to get done. Dinner's got to get done. All of these different things have to get done, and your care of your family is to do these things. But sometimes it's also really important just to sit in the space with them and be in that space. Spending time with children is really important. Children don't see that laundry and dishes and dinner every night. Don't get me wrong, they miss it if it went away. Okay. But they don't see that as being a good parent from a child's perspective. What they want is time. They want time with you, quality time with you, and not necessarily working time with you, if that makes sense. Pluto, of course, is still very much an influence here. And his grand sextile with Mercury, Jupiter, and Mars is a really positive aspect that kind of helps open up some space and some time for that time with those that are closest to you, if that makes sense. Also, there's an element there of, and there's also an element there of not just with your children, obviously, but other family members or other people that you're close to. You have to take time out of work to have fun, and that's really a big deal. I don't think that most Capricorns really give themselves the space to do that. And fun is a necessity. There was a client of mine towards the end of last year, beginning of the year, who saw these 3 words and said they changed her life. And when she shared them with me, they changed my life too. It's work, rest, play. Those are the 3 words: work, rest, play. Now, I've always gone by work and rest. That makes sense, but play, that's kind of weird to me, right? If I was a Sagittarius, maybe it wouldn't be weird to me, but I'm not a Sagittarius. And I feel like for Capricorns, this is very much a big deal. I have met very few Capricorns that are interested in the play part, but that play part is really important for your mental and your emotional stability. So this week really is all about making space for that playtime with your family, with your closest friends, with people that bring you joy. Because honestly, that kind of energy is what you need in order to move forward in your goals as well, even though it may have nothing to do with your goals. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that resonates. Aquarius. Saturn's influence is very much in your day-to-day activities, your schedule, and his square with Mercury continues, although Mercury's retrograde ends at the end of this week. So the good news about that is this challenge will be over in a week or two as Mercury moves on out of there, which is definitely what we're going for. Now, with Mercury's influence very much in your career at this time, this challenge, when you're talking about motivation for your career schedule and things coming in, wrenches in that schedule, this is very difficult. It's really hard for Aquarians to stay focused on one thing. Our brains are like 50 browsers open and the music's playing somewhere and we can't figure out where. So, when you're that highly intellectual and your brain is going like a million miles a minute, it's really very difficult to stay focused. And when something comes in to distract you, distractions come in, and it's really hard to get back into focus on what it is that you're doing. And those distractions can very quickly turn into excuses. And of course, that's something that we really want to avoid. So this week really is about paying attention to those wrenches and making sure that those wrenches don't become excuses. Yes, it's difficult to get back into focus on what it is that you need to do, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it. when you think about it. I've been in this position a million times, and the truth of the matter is that there's been so many things that have come in to distract me from all the things that I want to do, and I have allowed them to be excuses for why I'm not moving forward in my own career goals. This particular aspect comes up to say, okay, you've already done that. You've used all kinds of things as motivation killers and excuses to be motivation killers. Now, are you going to continue to do that? Or are you going to do the magical things that you said you were going to do? And that's really what Saturn is all about. Saturn is like, take responsibility for your actions, take responsibility for your goals, take responsibility for what it is that you came into this life to do, your life purpose. Because the truth is, if you don't take responsibility for it, no one else is going to be able to. This is your responsibility. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that resonates. And finally, Pisces, Neptune's continued grand sextile with Pluto and Mercury in retrograde up until the end of the week is still a very powerful aspect and a very helpful one towards your relationships, with focus being on relationships this week. And relationships, I have to say, is a very broad word. This house covers all relationships: parent-child, your love relationships, relationships with family, with friends, with acquaintances, etc. When you're focused on relationships, it's not so much about the quantity, it's the quality. Pisces can really go either way. They can go on a quantity, as in they are friends with everybody, and most Pisces are very friendly and very sociable with everybody. But the quality is really what's important. You can have a million relationships in your life, but that is not going to give you the good feeling that you're looking for from a few relationships of quality. And if your relationships aren't of quality, this week is really a good opportunity to take stock in as to why these relationships are not of good quality. So for instance, if you're talking about a relationship with a parent and a child, and there's communication issues, which of course are going to happen during a Mercury retrograde, right? You want to take stock as to why there's a communication issue. Most people will just go, that darn kid never listens to a word I say. Well, if you're not communicating with that kid properly, the kid is always going to respond in the exact same way. Now, if you approach the child instead of yelling at the child and saying, hey, don't do that, right? Most children are they're going to want to know why they're not supposed to do it, right? So if the child is going up to the oven ready to put their hands on it, hey, no, don't do that, chances are the child's going to put their hands on the oven anyways, right? If you were to change the way that you communicate that and say, now don't do that, you're going to burn yourself and it's going to hurt really bad, the child is probably going to think before they decide to do it anyways. So it really is all about adjusting the way that you communicate. There's certain communication patterns and certain definitely things that I remember my parents saying growing up that it just doesn't work. And so in order to change that in raising my own children, I changed the way I communicated it. So certain things, like, because I said so, that didn't work on me. It sure as heck didn't work on my children. So we have to change that up. Why? If I say don't do that and they say why, I have to explain to them why. Why? You don't want to run in the street because you might get hit by a car. And if you get hit by a car, you could be very dead, right? This way, the child is learning, the individual is learning, instead of just being shut down, which is what that kind of communication is actually doing. So this week, it really is all about that. It's about looking at your communication patterns within your relationships to see how you may be having a communication issue. And of course, you're going to find a communication issue with the other person as well. But you also want to look at how you can possibly change that communication by changing the way that you communicate. Because the truth is, sitting there and waiting for somebody to change to fix their shit, not going to work. Okay. It's just simply not going to work. If the way you've been communicating isn't going to work, you have to fix that problem. You have to change the way that you communicate. So that's what I have for you guys. I hope that resonates. And that is it for this week's horoscopes. I'm Melissa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good one.